Hello everyone and welcome to PoliticsEh. My name is Aiden. Today I got the opportunity to interview Mike Morrice, current MP for Kitchener Centre, part of the Green Party, and he's running for re-election. Today I got the opportunity to sit down with him, ask him some questions, and then go canvassing with him. So let's go. So when I got to his office, everybody was super friendly. All introduced themselves, talked to me. I waited around a little bit to be able to sit down with Mike himself. But then when he came over, introduced himself, we chatted for a bit, and then I got able to sit down and interview him. So here's that interview. I think the biggest thing that I really wanted to talk to you about today was that voters often vote for the leader or for the party. But you garner votes as an MP as well as for representing your constituents well. What are your thoughts on MPs working on behalf of their constituents versus the party line?
Well, that's actually why I chose to run with the Greens in the first place. Greens are the only party that doesn't tell their MPs how to vote. And often the other parties even tell their MPs what to say. Here's the slogan to repeat. So when I chose to run for the first time in 2019, I wanted to make sure I could do this in a way that stayed true to my values and that stayed true to my community. And as a Green, that's what they actually encourage. The idea is community first, party second, which is to me what democracy is supposed to be. Right? My job the last number of years has been to go to Ottawa to advocate for my community. And so in my view, you get a sense of what someone's about based on what party they're with. But to me, much more important is you have MPs who are going to a legislature, in my case, to Parliament, to fight for their communities. Whether it's addressing the housing crisis or getting mental health supports. To me, that's kind of the most important thing. But I think it's partly why you've seen not only myself get elected in Kitchener Centre, but my colleague Ashlyn Clancy. You just get re-elected with 52% of the vote. Mike Schreiner is a pretty amazing leader. I'm really proud of the work that Elizabeth May has also done as a Green over the years. But to me, when I'm hearing from folks at their door, what they're sharing with me is, what's affecting their lives, grocery prices going up, for example, wait times at the hospital. And as their MP, I want to go to Ottawa to work for them and truthfully work with anybody to do it. I'm not doing this for the Green Party, but the Greens allow me to do it in a way that lets me get things done for folks in Kitchener, which I think is the whole point.
So it's more of like, rather than working for the Greens, you're working for your constituents, and then the Greens are just allowing you to be able to do that.
That's exactly it.
Rather than having to run as an independent, which I think it's Ontario provincially only has one independent, because you kind of don't have that backing of like an established party.
That's right.
The Greens kind of, you get to run and act as an independent, but they like give you the...
And more than running as an independent, I think it's about being willing to work with others. And Greens are known for that kind of sense of cooperation. And so I'm proud to be a Green. If I think about Peter Bevan Baker on the East Coast, Elizabeth May on the West Coast, Greens have a reputation, including Mike Schreiner in Guelph, for working with anybody to get things done. But more important than politics and partisanship is my community and making progress for people and working with others to get that done. Recently, it was $5.4 million we secured for folks who are living unsheltered. I did that working with the Liberals. I didn't do it all by myself. I worked with the minister at the time, let him know about the fact that we were left off the list for that funding. Wrote him a letter, chatted with them, worked respectfully, and then 2 months later, we were awarded $5.4 million. I don't have to pretend that the Greens are the only ones who care about housing. What's important is that I'm going there to work on my community's behalf to get funding to address the crisis we're in.
That kind of leads into like another question I had, is that like, what is it like working in Parliament with these like two major parties that Canada has that have like historically like swapped power back and forth? Like, is there cooperation, discussion, partnership? Like, kind of what goes on with having these two large parties as like the Liberals and the Conservatives?
There's a little bit of both. I think what I have found in my time as an MP is that if I avoid the political point scoring, then MPs in both parties are more open to trusting me and working with me. So when I approached that minister about that housing funding, he knows I don't have some green agenda to make him look bad on Instagram the next day. I'm actually just working to try to get a win for us everybody wants to see progress on housing, right? So I think, speaking for myself, by turning down the partisanship, I'm able to work with anybody to get something done for my community. And to your point, 99.6% of the time, the parties all vote the same way.
Yeah.
So there is no shortage of partisanship, of heckling, of all that. But there are also MPs there who want to be there to get things done for their communities. So I don't want to paint, a blanket brush across all.
Yeah.
But there's a heavy dose of partisanship. I go there thinking, how do I try to get something done? And work with the big parties, work with the NDP. I've even worked with the Bloc Québécois on some things because I need to make sure we get votes from all sides. And we work for the disability benefit, for example, that I was able to make some progress with. I was able to get all parties to support, all parties to jointly sign a letter for arts funding. So that's my approach, at least.
Yeah. Do you think that there's been, with the rise of the internet and kind of how that has evolved, do you think that there's been an increase of people not, or MPs not wanting to cooperate because they're worried of oh, you're coming to me because you just want to score points online that'll potentially help you secure votes? Do you think that there's now less cooperation because of that?
Yeah, I would say there's two things that have happened. Even I was born in 1984. So before I was born, there was less centralization in the Prime Minister's office and in the party's office. Even something as simple as the fact that in debates in this campaign, there's one party who won't even send their MPs or their candidates to the debates. Because the message is all controlled by the central party, the votes are controlled by the central party, and it wasn't always that way. There used to be less of that centralization in the party, and that I think is, a bit corrosive on our democracy. Because in my view, you should be electing somebody who's going there for your community, not somebody who's just kind of being told how to vote and what to say when they get there. So I think there has been more centralization in recent years that make it more difficult. But then you're also right. When they introduced recording in the House of Commons, the idea, of course, was to provide more transparency. You can go online, in fact, anybody can go online and find everything I've ever said in the House of Commons in English and French. If you go to openparliament.ca, you can look up my name. You can search by housing, for example. You can see everything I've ever said on the housing crisis. So the benefit was meant to be provide more transparency on the work that elected MPs were doing for their communities. To your point, some have criticized it for being just like a clip factory. Because you get your clip that's the most extreme position that donors in your community or that your party want to see. Often in question period, 9 MPs from the same party all ask the exact same question because they all want their clip to send back home. So it's a question of how do you use the tools, and I think the parties have sometimes gone to the lowest common denominator. On the plus side, it does offer transparency, and I hope that voters will ask for accountability and maybe support folks like myself who are there working for their communities more than anything. I also think about when students are there. I look up and I even elementary school students who are in the House of Commons. And I think I want to be a role model for them. And I look at some of my colleagues and I worry that's not always the case, as you've seen, right?
Okay, a little bit of a different topic, but what surprised you when you first arrived in Parliament that average voters don't really know about? Because as you said, of Parliament tried to change things to make it more transparent and more open, but I still feel like the majority of Canadians don't really know what even happens at Parliament. So what was one thing that you were like, oh, this is not what I expected to actually happen at all?
Well, a few. One of them is how much can get done outside of the chamber. And so the amount of time to build a relationship with other MPs, even just over lunch, there's kind of a lobby area outside the chamber where I can just chat with somebody. And if I'm trying to get somebody to sign on to a letter for arts funding, for example, I can do that in the chamber, but I can also find time with folks outside. So the amount of how different people can be when they're being filmed versus when we might just be having lunch together. I've been encouraged by that. I remember early on feeling a bit intimidated by being there. All these people I'd only ever seen on TV, and now I'm a colleague of theirs, and I remember reminding myself, I worked just as hard, if not harder, to get there for my community. I'm going to make the most of every bit I've got here.
Yeah.
The other thing that was a bit surprising to me that I learned a bit more about is how much gets done at committee. A lot of the time when you think about Parliament, you think about question period and the theatrics often that some put on in question period. Some of the things I'm most proud of, I got done at committee, which is where smaller groups of 12 MPs get together to amend legislation, for example. So the Canada Disability Benefit, it's a $6 billion new investment from the federal government. I worked very hard to push them to act on that, wrote a joint letter, got other MPs, 80 some odd MPs to sign it. We did a petition that put pressure. But when it came to committee, 5 of the 9 amendments to that bill came from my team and I, which came from the disability community. We got more than every other MP in the country combined.
Wow.
It will be indexed to inflation, for example, because of an amendment I got through at committee. And I'm not sure prior to being elected I was, fully understanding how much influence I can have at committee, presenting amendments on any bill. And if it's well-researched and reasonable, turns out I can get support. On that inflation one, for example, they left it out of the bill.
Wow.
But as soon as I presented it, what MP is not going to support a person with a disability having their benefit indexed to inflation when their salary already is indexed to inflation? Well, it got unanimous support. But all it took was presenting the amendment. And so I don't think I fully realized that, and I'm really encouraged by that. It's part of why I hope to go back to Ottawa, is to continue being there, doing the research, working hard, and being willing to work with other people so I can get those kinds of wins for my community. Because now I'm knocking on doors and letting folks know the benefit's not what I want it to be. There's a lot that's lacking in it, but that they can apply for it starting May 1st as a result of the work that we did. It's an extra $200 a month for folks who have the disability tax credit already. That's a constructive addition to the social safety net that wasn't there when I was first elected in 2021.
Yeah. So talking about that, is the reason or motivation that you first ran with, has that changed with you running again?
Sure, absolutely. Because I think a big part of this is about listening to folks in the community. I'll talk about that disability benefit again as an example. When I first ran, I didn't know and understand that 40% of folks living in poverty are people with disabilities. Wow. And I learned about that by knocking on doors. And hearing from folks living on ODSP. Was that my original reason for running? Not necessarily. Originally, I was running because I was just upset with the way things were going in the housing crisis, with the climate crisis. But I think if a person's doing this job well and listening to their community, you'll learn about different realities that people are facing. And my job is to go to Ottawa to address in legislation and federal policy to make life better. And so there's plenty that I've worked on that I didn't know about before. In fact, even knocking on doors with me today, we may learn a thing or two from someone. And I always say I'm a better MP when I can learn from that person's experience. And then when I speak about it in Ottawa, I can say, well, this came from Martha. Let me tell you about what Martha's going through. A few nights ago, I was some folks who were getting rent-evicted from their apartment. I've been fighting to address the housing crisis. I want to get more units built. I want to protect existing units. Much more powerful when I can speak about someone who's going through that, so that they, again, know I'm not here just for some partisan shot. I'm actually here for Martha and for the experience I learned from her. It's why I actually knock on doors even between elections. To me, it's about being accountable, but it's about learning from my community so that I'm connected and best representing folks right across the community.
Do you think that the Green Party has kind of started to evolve? Because I noticed with the provincial election and then even with this election that the Green Party isn't only just about the environment anymore. And I feel like it has kind of evolved. And do you think that people are starting to realize that? Or is it something that you're still kind of having to I don't want to say fight against, but kind of change the mindset of people of we're not just a party of super, super pro-environment, obviously still are, but you have other priorities and stuff that you want to work on.
I think you answered it right in the question. It's about perception. I think there's been a need to address that perception. And we might even hear about it today. There are some folks who might say, well, Green Party, that must mean you care about the environment. And don't get me wrong, we can talk climate if you'd like. But as a Green, to me, it's first and foremost about serving my community, because Greens are the only ones who allow me to actually put my community ahead of the partisanship. I never have to waste my time filibustering a committee the way other MPs might have to. I never have to lie. often share that with folks in the community.
Yeah.
You might not always agree with something I do, and I'm welcome to hear feedback and I'm accountable to you, but isn't it refreshing? To me, the hardest job, people say it must be hard to be a Green MP, and it might be harder to get elected as a Green, but I think the job is actually easier in some ways because I can be fully transparent about the actions I took and why I thought that was the best course of action for our community. And if you don't agree with me, I'm here to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
And that's an important piece of accountability too.
Yeah. And I'll just ask one question before we have to.
And then we'll go get knocking on some doors.
Yeah, sounds good. So electoral reform is something that we're like hearing more and more in Canada on like provincial level and the federal level. What are you doing towards like this like growing issue of electoral reform, and like kind of what has happened with other MPs and other parties like behind the scenes? Because I feel like we hear a lot about it, but nothing ever seems to get done.
So I can give a kind of a quick snapshot. The former Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, in 2015, promised 1,800 times that would be the last election under winner-take-all, divisive, first past the post.
Yeah.
And so Canadians, he did that because he knew there was a lot of interest in moving towards the electoral reform of some kind. As you know, he won that election, and he broke that promise. It is rare that I knock on doors in our community and someone over the course of a day doesn't bring up their frustration with first past the post and with the broken promise on electoral reform. And so to directly answer your question, what I did since getting elected, I put forward a motion following the lead of Fair Vote Canada. Fair Vote Canada is the go-to civil society organization that mobilizes people who are wanting to see electoral reform across the country.
Okay.
And what they had been pushing for was even just a citizens' assembly on electoral reform, which would be like a jury, a set of people who are picked to get input from experts to make recommendations to Parliament. The idea being to depoliticize it, have regular folks get expert advice and make recommendations. I put forward that motion, it's motion 76. After putting forward the motion, I got the maximum number of people to joint second the motion from all parties. The Liberal Party themselves, their membership voted on the terms of that motion. It was the same text. They endorsed it as a party. 86% of Canadians want to see a citizens' assembly. I drew a low number in the lottery draw of who gets their motions voted on. So I wasn't in a position to get my motion voted on. I found an NDP colleague who drew a better number and worked with her. She brought it forward for a vote. It's motion 86 for those who are curious. It was voted on for the first time ever in this session of Parliament. Unfortunately, the Liberals and Conservatives both voted against it. 39 Liberals broke party rank and 3 Conservatives broke party rank. They ended up supporting it.
Wow.
So it was the most dissenting votes in those two parties of any vote in the last session of Parliament.
Wow.
That's the plus side. Unfortunately, the vote didn't carry, and so the Citizens' Assembly wasn't brought forward. I want to go back to Ottawa to continue to advocate for it, and this election is a time for Canadians to get MPs elected who are going to, at minimum, support a Citizens' Assembly, or to put pressure for folks who are watching to reach out to candidates to encourage them to support a Citizens' Assembly. You can check out more at Fair Vote Canada. I think it's fairvote.ca. But as long as I'm an elected MP, knowing how many people in our community, like you, Aidan, want to see electoral reform, and it's a simple idea, is that every vote should count.
Yeah.
That'd be more fair. So I'm going to keep working to make sure every vote counts, to do away with any fear-based voting, to do away with the divisive approach of first past the post, like most modern democracies already have. That's what I've done so far, but I want to keep doing it.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, well, let's get out there and knock on some doors.
That sounds good.
So after we did that interview, we went out, did some canvassing, knocked on doors. It was really interesting seeing him interact with the people in his constituency, the people that would be voting for him, because he really cares about his community. And I think that we hear politicians all the time say that they care about their community, but then we never actually see it. But I felt, at least when I went out with him, that he actually does care about his community, and he told me that he goes out, tries to ask what problems they have and what they want to tell him. And he even told me that not during election time, he still goes out and knocks on doors and talks to people. And I think that's really respectable, to see a politician that actually cares about their community and isn't in it just to be a politician, I think was really, really refreshing. So I did do a couple interviews with some people. Obviously, if they didn't wish to be recorded, I didn't record them. I do have their audio, obviously. So let's check those out. For this, why are you voting for Mike specifically?
Well, number one, I like what he believes in and everything. I'm for the Green. That's like, and we need a total upset. We need to have more parties in the House, not just one or two. We need as many as we can get in the House to make sure that nobody gets decisions on their own.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
so like, because, yeah, I know you mentioned before of like a majority government and they're just able to really push through anything that they want.
Exactly. We can't have a majority.
Yeah.
And if we just have PCs and Liberals, you might as well have a majority.
Yeah. Do you think is like electoral reform kind of something on your mind that you think is important for Canada?
Yes. Yeah, I think we should. I think everybody should go out and vote. Whether you're 18 or 70, 80, you have to voice.
Yeah.
It's our only real right we have.
Yeah. And do you think that like Mike does a better job at representing your voice?
I think so. I think he hits a lot of the things that are important to us. I just don't think anybody really understands or thinks they have the ability to fight Trump at this moment. And we can't worry about just what Trump has to say. We have to go with who's going to work for us as Canadians,
Yeah.
not for the U.S.
Yeah.
So with her, I found her biggest issue really to be representation, and especially electoral reform, it seemed. And like I've already kind of talked about, and I believe that we need electoral reform, and I think that the easiest way is for everybody to actually go in and vote. We'll see what the voter turnout for this election is going to be like, but for the provincial election in Ontario, like I said, it was really low. And it seems like she agreed with me and that we need some form of mandatory voting. I think that that is the most realistic form of electoral reform for Canada. It's the easiest. We had Trudeau promise in 2015 that he would enact electoral reform. Obviously, in the interview, I asked him about electoral reform, and it's not that easy to do. But I think mandatory voting is something that would be relatively easy to get out and do, and it seems like she agrees with me. Then I got to do another interview. Again, didn't want to be on camera. Perfectly fine. But I did get to pet her dog. His name is Bear, so we'll be able to see him during the interview.
What are your kind of priorities with like voting in this election? Like,
Okay.
kind of why are you like in support of Mike?
I did not start voting Green because I knew a lot about the party. I just believed in environmental protection, and I believed in people that were looking towards a more balanced way of looking at making choices that included our environment. But as I went along, I met Mike at Strolling Suppers, volunteering, helping vulnerable people in the downtown area, and that's why I vote Green now. I vote Green because I believe in the person. And I struggled with this particular election because I want to vote for Mike because I believe in him. But I also see that the country itself is being split apart, much what we see in the States. And I want to vote for the people that are continuing the inclusion and the respect and the freedoms that we have from generations, even for decades, fought for people to have, and that there is a party that wants to take that away. And so you're kind of in your heart, you're struggling with, do I vote for the party that will at least keep aligning with the future, which is the future of Canada, which is inclusive and respectful, and everybody has those freedoms, or do I vote my heart, which is Mike? And so to struggle between those two, I decided to go with my heart, because no matter what happens in this election, the people who are holding on to the past and trying to change things and make them the way they used to be are not the future. And so maybe they may, but their time is short and their time is running out, because as we evolve and change as people, we cannot go back. We're never going to go back to before there was a wheel, and we're certainly not going to go back to a place where people didn't have the freedom to be who they were supposed to be and born to be. So I have to trust. I have to trust in all of the work that's gone into changing people's minds and hearts, the children who are learning to include and respect and to give freedom. And that's going to go forward no matter who gets in, and nobody has power for a temporary time. It will just demonstrate how important it is to continue moving forward.
Okay. So after that interview, it was just really nice to hear someone be so compassionate about others and really care so much about change. And, you know, I think that we are going to continue to see change, and I hope we continue to see change because we need to be compassionate towards one another. And hearing someone really talk about that they truly believe in their heart that that's what they believe was super refreshing and nice to hear. So I'm super grateful to have been able to do this interview with him. I learned a lot. It was super fun going out and just hanging out with him all day, walking around, talking to people as well, just getting, you know, the idea of everyday people and how they feel about the election and their priorities and stuff like that. And I think the biggest takeaway from my day, obviously I wasn't able to record everything, so I guess you kind of just have to trust me and my memory, but the biggest thing that I took away from this was that Mike Morrice actually cares about his community. And I think the biggest thing that stuck with me that he said was that he said he doesn't want to be a politician. He just wants to be someone to represent his community, to elevate their voices. And I really saw that, you know, with a lot of politicians, they're in it to gain power, or they're just in it to go to Ottawa and go to Parliament or whatever. But Mike Morrice really cares about Kitchener Centre, about his community, about representing those people and caring, you know, like we would go up to houses and he'd ask them, what's a priority to you? What's something you want to tell me? What's something I can do to help you? And there was a few people that obviously did not want to vote for him, but he still was like, well, I still want to hear from you. I want to understand. We talked to one person about gun laws and stuff like that, and he was like, well, obviously I don't know a lot about gun laws. I would be very interested in sitting down with you and having a conversation about your opinions on this and your thoughts and feelings and what I can do to do better and understand everything. And I just thought that's what a politician should be, especially with our local representative, members of parliament. That's what they should do. And I think Mike is really an example and like the bare minimum that we should be looking for in our politicians. Now, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I think that is your decision only, but I really hope that this video was super helpful into kind of what it's like for someone to go out and campaign, because I know it's not everybody knows what that's like. I think he seems like a very, very nice, genuine person. Everyone I saw interact with him was clearly just very happy, and there wasn't like an energy of like, oh, he's just like putting up an act. He seemed very much like himself, and I really appreciated that. But even if you don't live in Kitchener Centre, make sure you go out and vote. It's super important. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.